Hey, welcome to Windham Weekly. It's Ken Fulham, the voice of Windham, and Mark Doyle, your host of this weekly show where we bring you interesting guests, some not as interesting. Well, we have one tonight, that's for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, my babe, one of my favorite people in Windham is with us today. She's going to talk about a little bit of the history, how things have changed in Willimantic, and the difference she's made in Willimantic.
Lynn Weeks is here?
No, I love Lynn, but this is Lorraine McDevitt, a.k.a. Ken's babe.
Thank you very much, both of you, for having me. It's a pleasure, and I like nothing more than to talk about my community.
All right, Mr.
Excellent.
Doyle, do something.
Excellent. Let's start off. Let's go back in time, Lorraine. You know what I was thinking just this morning about some of the, I guess, I don't want to say the last, but some of the great benefactors for Willimantic, the Lauder Greer people. Were you just a child when they were around?
No, but I will tell you, my move to Willimantic was purposeful from Mansfield because I felt my children needed diversity, and I felt Willimantic had everything, and Windham, that I was looking for my children to grow up naturally. Yep. And I found my house, as you know, the location, and the luckiest part of my moving there was my next door neighbor was Teresa Bartlett, who owned the Chronicle. And she became a third grandparent to my children. I asked her what the dynamic politically was in Willimantic and Windham. Of course, when she told me, I was slightly disappointed. But I said to her, I'm from the other side, and I'm wondering how I can get involved. So God bless her, she put me in touch with, and I don't know if any of you remember, Henry Kucharski. And Henry was the chairman of the Republican Town Committee. So she made arrangements for me to meet with him. Remember Lindy's? Yes. Down the corner? And
Mark ate there all the time.
Yeah.
Let's look what happened to him.
I know, God bless him. He still has it with him.
I hopped there. I was hopping there. The Lindsay Hodgkin.
But anyway, I met Henry and with Teresa, and he told me everything that was going on, and he said if I was really interested, that they were having a meeting. If you remember, Charlie Tarpinian was at one end, and he was at the other. They were having a meeting that following day, and would I like to come? So I went, and I met all of those people who were very, very much involved. I don't know if you remember Arlene Aschenbo. She owned a store on Main Street, and she was part of the party. Sebastian Trinello, who was a very, very, what shall I say, loyal Windham Willimantic person. So after that, Teresa called me aside, and she said, I'm going to give you the history so you'll know everything there is to know about Windham and Willimantic. So we went through archives that she had through the Chronicle, and I learned about people, who lived here, who lived at the families, and the whole about the mill and everything that was going on. So I felt that I was intelligent enough with what I was learning from her that if I joined the party, I would have a better vision. And that's how I got started. And that was in 1973.
Wow. Hey, just for the listeners out there, 860-456-1400. Please call in if you know Lorraine. Say hi, ask how she's doing, catch up with her. Now, if you're a student of Ms. Godbout, this is her mother. You could tell her how wonderful her daughter is as a school teacher at the high school. This family is very committed to Willimantic. Lorraine, what about Main Street? When you first moved to town, how was Main Street compared to today in the investments that we made, I think, of late, which are fantastic?
Well, I will tell you, Thursday night was the premier time. All the stores were open. The children went to the Y, they swam. If you remember, Angus Wooten was in charge, Angus, yeah. And all the kids would swim. They'd have basketball. Then all parents would be on Main Street, and the kids would come out, or the children, I should say. They'd come down, and Mr. Bruce, God bless him, would give them a little sheet of paper to go to Halleck's to get an ice cream cone. And then the children were on Main Street looking at the shops. Everything was open. Everybody knew each other. It was such a vibrant time, and no matter what you were doing, you would make sure that time slot was left, so Thursday night you could go to Main Street and visit with everyone. Dick Nassif was out there, the people who owned, I think, where they had the Army Navy stuff. That gentleman was
Surplus
out.
Center, yep.
Yep, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. The street was vibrant. The people were excited. And then I don't know whether I blinked And all of a sudden, things began to change. And I was
Mark
thinking...
Doyle moved to town at that point.
Mark became my neighbor, and that was a sad day. We mourn that every year.
So Lorraine, were there still horses on the streets when you were...
Actually, there were horses and wagons. As a matter of fact, I drove mine down Church Street with my children in it and didn't stop at the stop signs. I just kept right on going.
Rolled right through, huh?
Yep, right through. But I think that something got lost in between.
Was that more due to redevelopment?
I think so. I think when they started, if you remember the Pinot building, when that was the first thing that was sold during that time, I believe, and then some of the other buildings were. And then I think the most disappointing thing for me was I felt that some of the buildings that were taken down could have been revived. Under the proper circumstances, because they were quite lovely, they were nice, they were historical. But at that point, everyone said, let's knock this down and put this up and do this and do that. And I really don't know whether the community as a whole had enough say about some of the things that were being done. And that was disappointing to me, because I think the community and the running of the community are the people that are in it, and that was getting lost.
I think that happened to, as a kid, I worked in downtown in my city in Rhode Island, and I worked there. I used to ride my bike to a men's clothing store, which I worked at right after school, and there were shops up and down, 2 men's clothing stores, et cetera, and then redevelopment came to our downtown with these grandiose ideas, and they decided, we'll shut down Main Street and make it a walking wall with a covered awning across the whole thing. And you talk about, I remember being a senior at that point in high school, and the place is shut down. It was shut down left and right. And in downtown Providence, it happened to a couple of streets out there as well. They tried to convert it. And like Willimantic today, where the town itself has made these investments, such as the senior center, the parking garage, and so on. So did my hometown recently, and it's kind of like rewriting history with the new structures going up and starting to see some vibrancy. Do you see that here? I am beginning to see that, and I have great hopes that it will continue and all be positive. I think it all needs to be positive. Everyone has to get together and think the same thought, and not have all these little, well, maybe do this, maybe do that. Let's get another committee to look at this or do that. If you've already got a schematic plan that you think is going to work, get everyone to work on that plan, not try to change every little thing, because you have to have change, but it has to be structural, it has to be constructive, and it has to be for the whole community. It just can't be little pockets of things. So I think a lot of that has to do with who's bringing the ideas, who is accepting the idea, and who is going to bring it to the people. And I think that that's part of the problem in every community. The communities have to speak up, and they have to be told. Well, I see that too. I'm wondering about all the different groups. Like, you get the Third Thursday group, you get the Windham Cares group, you have our lighting committee group for the holiday lights. You have so many, and then you get the recreation one, which is, encapsulating a lot of it. But I wonder if there's, he had a tri-board back in the day. I wonder if these groups can get together collectively, and instead of have individual things, because the activity level has picked up, but it's in my opinion, it's helter-skelter. Yeah. Then you got the shelter, the Shabu stage,
yeah,
and all the activities there that people still claim they can't, now that we got 2 billboards, that they don't know what the heck's going on. And not everyone wants to go on and go to the town website and see what's going on here and there.
Right.
I think there's got to be some kind of, I call it organized chaos,
yeah,
of all the different things, because you do miss a lot on the weekends if you're not paying attention, especially once spring hits and third Thursday starts, and then this happens, then you get another group trying to do this.
Well, again, back in the day, if you will, you had at least 2 very active newspapers. You had the Chronicle, which was extremely active as a daily issue, and then you had the Broadcaster.
Exactly.
And everybody loved the Broadcaster.
Absolutely.
It came out once a week, and you had your coupons in there. And you had a vibrant market with the radio, because everyone was on. Now people are on the internet and they're missing things, and so they're not as involved locally. They're trying to get the word out to people about what's happening locally is always difficult.
Exactly. If you remember when they were going to do the Shell, there was all kinds of controversy, and to me, and it's a personal opinion, the silliest thing that I heard about building the shell was it was going to block the front of the Catholic school. And I thought, what does that mean? But there were people that actually complained about that. And I thought, this is we're having progress here by doing this. Now it's used. People go there. The parcel is used. They use the stage. And all of those people who were negative when it first started, I've seen them show up at all of the events. Right. So if you don't start with a positive mind and someone says something negative to you and you get on board with them, before you know it, you've got this little pocket of people that are running around and saying, well, we don't want that, we don't want that. But it's not the total population. It's just a certain group of people. But they seem to scream the loudest, so that's what you hear. You don't hear the people saying, we need that, let's do it. Because those are the ones that are doing all the work underneath. Right. Yep. And so they're not going to speak up for themselves. And I find, and I always speak up for myself, whether it's right or wrong. Right. But I find, if I'm part of the community.
No fact-checking today, let me tell you that much.
And that's, listen, I'm going to bump that knee in a minute. But anyway,
get your cane back.
I'm going to put my cane in back. But the thing of it is, I really think that, as you said, all these groups have to come together. They can all have their own idea, but get together maybe once a month, every 3 months, and we can do. And is it something that we can all work on, one project at a time, not try to do all these things at the same time, because you're breaking up the community with the different pockets doing different things rather than all of them getting together.
I just think sometimes it's not organized and there's not enough people to go around as it is.
Exactly.
You can't find people to run for office anymore in either party. And I'm just in that sense, and the same thing with, we're running out of steam as older guys trying to light up this town. Thank God for the Public Works helping us out. But I'm sure the people in the garden club who are trying to light up the bridge now, at the same time, and the Windham Cares group is either constantly on the fundraising thing to pass up. It just seems like there could be some assistance if we all work together on this.
Exactly. Unity creates positivity, and I think that's what you need. I remember I was at a meeting, and we were talking about Main Street and the lights and everything, and God bless Brad Wojak, who I thought is a wonderful man and was a friend. He said something about the Main Street and the lights, and they weren't able to, put the flowers out. And so I said, you know what, in memory of my daughter, I am going to pay for the baskets to be put in May on Main Street. And I started that on behalf of her, God bless her. And it's continued. And they're going to put them out again after the 15th of this month. You cannot be surprised in my telling you this, but some of the older people in town will stop me and say, you know what, that was a really positive thing that you did. And I said, it wasn't me that did it. It was the fact that I felt it was needed. The street looks so much better. People appreciate it. And the fact that it's in memory of my child, I said, was wonderful. But on the other hand, it made so many people happy. And little things, people just need to think about the little things create larger things. And when you get to have the larger thing, then you have something that's going to be productive. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And of course, with the economy being what it is today, we really have to put our heads together in anything that we suggest that's going to be good for the community. But everyone has to be on board, Ken, as you said.
It goes to the old saying, you got to work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Because there's fewer and fewer people who want to volunteer their time, never mind labor.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're seeing over the course of time the I don't want to say demise, but the loss of the social clubs.
Yep.
Yeah. Now it's primarily just the else. I know when I first came to town, there was Bocash, and you had the Brotherhood of Clubs, and they would get together and they would do performances at the rec field, and there was more organization. You're right. But we have to find a way of organizing people now in the day and age of internet. It's just a whole different thing.
And not only that, but everything doesn't have to cost money. It just has to cost time, effort, and the will to make it be successful. And, you can't put a dollar sign on everything. And I think that a lot of people feel today that the dollar has shrunk. I mean, Canadian money is more valuable than ours now. But my point is that we have gone so far the other way that it's going to be difficult to pop up to that again. But on the other hand, we can if everyone works and does the same page. And I find that that's going to be beneficial to the community. And I hope we're going in that direction.
Hope so. So what about some of the names or the people of the past? I know you were talking about the Surplus Center, but there's also some of the other names, like I mentioned earlier, the Law and Career
Remy's.
Foundation.
The Remy's was a great place to go. And Friendly's. I remember one of my very best friends and someone who I really miss, Mary Lou DeVivo and I used to go to the school board meetings. And when we had an issue, and we were neighbors, and afterwards, we would always go to Friendly's, and without doubt, we would meet 6 or 7 other people from the community that were in Friendly's, and before you know it, we were closing the joint down because we were all
Wild,
talking.
crazy women. Wild.
We were all
ice cream
talking.
sundaes all around.
Yep, and the thing was, we were all talking and all had the same goal. And of course, Mary Lou was 100% Willimantic, as everyone knows, and I was very, very happy to say that she was my friend, my very good friend, and I appreciated her. But we always talked about those things. And I said, going back when Jimmy was part of the boards, and we would talk, it wasn't Democrat, Republican, Independent. It was all of us for the same goal, everything for the community. And I think that there's been a loss of that idea. Perhaps they're trying to bring it back, but there has to be more effort put into it so that it will come to fruition. You can't just talk about something. You have to act on it, or it's never going to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless.
Is that something that's missing in Willimantic? Is, because I hear from my mother-in-law the same thing about the neighborhood friends and families that just work together no matter what, help each other out.
Absolutely.
You joined, I know you were part of the Italian club. And this club and that club. We had the Irish club. We had the Lebanese club. A lot of that's missing.
Yep. And also when we had, I remember talking about your mother-in-law, bless her heart, our daughters were swimmers. And we would have a program at the middle school's pool. Yep. And they would have a show, something like it would be swimming and only. And the girls would dress up in costume. And
dolphins.
Everybody came.
They're called dolphins.
Yes. Yep. And everybody came. The parents were crowded into that sweaty little it's that pool, but they were there, and it was wonderful. Everybody worked together. The children all worked together. It was not this group, that group, or the other group. They said, we're going to have this. Who wants to participate no matter what? If you can float in the water, you can be part of it. And I remember sewing up costumes at the last minute and all the mothers coming in. These are mothers that didn't participate in everything, but this was something that they positively wanted to do. After they did this the first time, they immediately wanted to know when we were going to have something else, so that we can expose the children in the community to the children's achievements at swimming, soccer, whatever it was. And that's been lost a little bit also. So there are so many different avenues that we can travel to get to the right goal, but it can't be done with one group or another. It has to be done totality. And I'm hoping that happens before I die, at least. I'd like to see that happen.
Well, you've got another 30 years in your
Well, perhaps. That's true. That's true. I'm going to follow both of you. But I expect to be.
Wow.
But and anyone out there who is of my age group and lived here, and I was like transplanted from the community I grew up in. So coming here to a little community was wonderful, and there were such great goals. And I always felt that there was so much that we could give and offer. Just the train. When the train stopped, I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to us. But I wasn't told. I didn't have a vote. So those are the kinds of things that are so dynamic that the people need to know about so they can have a voice. Because perhaps if enough other people stood up, maybe the train would still be going up to Springfield or wherever it was
I can only
going.
say, if we're going to follow Ken, you better be careful, because I think he's going the other way. I don't think he's going to heaven. So I would be careful if you're following Ken.
Well, we may just be in limbo, you and I. We'll have to decide when we get there.
But speaking of the train, I remember, and I don't know how long ago this was. I was working at Wild Motors actually at the time when they brought back the Canadian rail line.
Yep.
It was like at 1:00 in the morning it came, but I was down there with the whole crowd of people to greet the Canadian train that stopped on Bridge Street.
Yep.
Yep.
It was an event, and I remember I took my mother because when I first moved here to Willimantic, and I took her down, and she came to my house, having come where I grew up. She said to me, "Oh my God!" She said, "Where are all the stores?" And I said, "Mother, this is it." So she said, "Oh my God!" And she made me laugh because she said, "I don't see Bloomingdale's anywhere." And I said, "Well, no, Mother, you're going to see Fullerton Fournier. They're friends of mine. Right. Their clothes are wonderful. You're going to see Todd's. You're going to see Bruce's." And I just thought, so many people that gravitated to this area and have stayed are here because they want to see positive things happen. And this is our time. If we don't do it now, we're never going to get another opportunity. And people start to have to act.
We don't want to get into politics per se, but can you talk to the people about your experiences and the boards that you've been on and so on?
I came on as an alderman, and don't laugh, but I was the youngest on, and I was being, not so much programmed.
Is that the first board you got on?
Yes, we were aldermen. Yeah. And I remember I was sitting next to, and God bless him, Armin Martineau, and he said he was, of course, he kept telling me he was on the other side.
Right,
but
he was
that was
a loyal
okay.
Democrat worker,
right,
and a barber in town.
Right. So he said to me, "Listen, if you want to know anything, you tell me." So during the meetings, if something was discussed, and of course I've always been a very quiet child, and he would poke me.
Wow.
He would poke me and say, "Speak up, speak up and say something." And I remember the other person was Neil Messick. So I was sitting next to, and God bless Neil, I was sitting next to Armin and Neil would lean over and say to the two of us, should we say that we think that's a good idea or should we not? And that, including me in this little group of three, two of which were from the other party, I felt, oh my God, this is wonderful. We're talking about this, and we're going to do something about it. Then I went from alderman, and then we went to selectman, and we changed everything again. And that group was good. I remember Cora Moore and Virginia Darrow, who were passionate about the community, and I worked with them, and I really worked with some really wonderful people. Then again, we changed my last 4 years to the council. So my 40 years on the boards was very, very, I was appreciative of the fact that I kept getting voted in, but I also was appreciative with the fact that I could give my opinion. Whether you liked it or not, I still had an opportunity to say what I thought, and no one was going to say, well, no, you're wrong, right. We're not going to do that. They would say, you know what, we'll take that under consideration. And I don't feel that that's being done anywhere today. Everything has to be taken under consideration if you think the idea is going to be the best for the community. And I find that with all these boards, I never had... I had one unfortunate situation when Dan Line was the first selectman, I believe, and it was a personality thing. But other than that, I never really had any distaste for any of the other members, and we always met. If there was going to be something good.
But I served with you when
yes,
your last
remember
term, right?
We used to go in the courtroom and talk about an issue and say, listen, we have 7 people for it, so one of us will talk about it and bring it forward and then move it forward. And that's how we operated. And the opposing party part never came in. It was always about the best thing for the community. So I had, and as I say, 40 years is a long time, but I never can say that I was disappointed that I wanted to be on this. I will thank and love Mrs. Bartlett forever for nudging me, Henry Kucharski as a mentor, and Herbie Mills was another one that was a great mentor for me. And I felt that I had learned so much from them that if I could continue, and people still wanted me to continue in that regard, I was going to do what I thought was the best for the community, and
that was
I felt
also,
that we
also
did.
during the time of Virginia Darrow was.
Yes, Virginia. And Cora Moore.
Cora Moore and Ives.
Yes, and he was a pip. I really liked him, but he would always question everything. And then the next day, I would see his wife because their children went to the Catholic school like my children, and she'd say, "Boy, I was glad that you straightened Lou out because we had discussed that at home." And I said, "No, I didn't straighten him out. He just decided that it was on the side of reasonability, and that's why he said yes. So I said, that's all you needed. You just needed to have people that were willing to get together and do the best thing that they could. Yes.
What board did Larry? He's on the council.
Larry was a pip. He was the pip. He would.
A pimp?
Well, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to ask his son. I don't remember hearing about that, but
Larry was a good man.
he was a peach, and he would say all the time, well, we've got to really discuss this. And I said, well, let's go in and see Henry. And then 5 or 6 of us would go in and talk to Henry, and he would talk to Charlie Tarpinian. Charlie would talk to his group. By the time we got to the meeting, we had come to a consensus. There was no argument. And we would do what had to be done, and then also I think too many committees overwhelm you. I think if you have 5 standing committees, that they should be able to do the work and not have a little splinter here or a splinter there, and because then you're breaking off all of those people who might have a good idea because they're not bringing it to the right place.
I think actually they've gone overboard. They've gone the wrong side. I think now, as I recall, the council doesn't have any committees.
Yep.
So you're right. So some of that work has to get done at committee level, where it's a smaller group working together.
Exactly.
But I think they've, over the period, the council has dropped off all of their committees.
But I do know there are people on the present council that would like to see that happen again.
I'm sure, yeah.
And I think that, but the point is that I don't ever want to say it's too late to do something, because I don't think it's ever too late to do something. But I also think that if in fact they feel strongly enough that they should absolutely do that, especially if it's a committee that's going to be progressive and not just have a little meeting and, talk about this and that. You have to come out on the other end with a thought or a solution, and you just can't have a committee to sit and talk, because you could bring them to your house and have coffee and do it there.
What do you think about the change in government? Do you like the town manager form versus all the years as the strong mayor?
Well, at the time, mayor was the only thing we knew.
Correct, yeah.
So having the town manager and having worked with, I think Mr. Beats was the town manager that I worked with.
Wasn't it? One,
yes,
Mr.
yes.
Beats, yep.
And I always feel that you have to have the person that's going to best suit the dynamic of the community. And I think sometimes we go off to the left, and we don't really do that. I understand the gentleman that's there now is very dynamic. He wants to see things move forward, and apparently everyone likes him. I've had the opportunity to meet him one time, and I thought he was really, really good. But the thing is, if you're going to do that, you have to have an understanding that, first of all, which is the council now, but the council should be the last word from the advice that they get from the town manager. I don't think it's one person's decision, and I would like to see more of that happen. And I think that this gentleman is going to do that.
So you like the town manager form of government?
I did like that. I find that being mayor is wonderful, but I think it's, and I hate using this expression, but it's like a titular kind of appointment. And, and somebody's going to shoot me for saying this, but cutting ribbons and kissing babies on the head is not what I would call for. I think you have to have a consistent person who has a goal for the whole community and is going to be heard rather than just
Well, you
seen.
had your shot. You ran once for the top spot, first selectman.
Yep.
I remember working that campaign with you, the Licata sisters, and all your gang.
Yep. And as a matter of fact, I was even asked by...
Who the heck were you running against?
I ran against Audrey Beck for representative years and years
that was
ago,
before me.
and I lost by...
I'm talking about first selectman race.
Oh, no, yeah, I was asked to do that, too. But that, I think that had a lot to do with my family dynamic at the time. My children were growing up, and I just felt that it may take too much time. But I did run against Audrey Beck way back when, and I was asked by the party to do that. And I did quite well. But I wasn't disappointed that she won, at all. But my face got out there, and I felt that I was able to let people know who I was in the neighboring communities, and I got to meet a lot of other people who were involved in government, Scotland and Chaplin and people like that, where I never would have known them otherwise. And unfortunately, at this point in time, I think most of our little communities are having the same kinds of problems we're having. I mean, it's not unique to Windham and Willimantic.
No, it's also it's to do with the social structure. I remember when I first came to town as the Y director. After 5 o'clock, there was an awful lot of politics and discussion taking place in my health center.
Yep.
And they don't have a place like that. They get together.
Yep.
But speaking of which, do you recall any of the great social events? I'm thinking back of Bob Mustard and when the hotel hooker or the Nathan Hale had the piano bar and
the dance floor upstairs. Yep. Peter and I were living in stores at the time, and friends of ours who he was involved with through his job invited us, and I didn't even know there was that great upstairs. Yes. And we were upstairs. Lucy Crosby and her husband were there. The Mustards were there, and
not the relishes, though.
And
it's a joke, Lorraine.
Okay.
Please.
And the two Brighties were there.
I'm glad you
and
explained that, Ken.
everybody was there. It was a great social event, and I really enjoyed having that. And then we all went across the street to the Italian Gardens and ate pizzas and closed the place. So
again, Friendlies, now the Italian Garden.
Yep.
What are you, a night owl?
I used to be. Now, at this stage of my life, I have my children watching over me constantly.
She was sobering up from all that time at the Hale. Yes. Well, there's a wild bunch there. I understand Bob Mustard cut quite a rug there.
Oh, yeah. It was really, really good. He was a jitterbug.
Yeah.
But, and I really think in a different venue with the same intention, they can do that today. And I'm hoping that happens.
So Lorraine, so now your children that are they're nearby.
Yes.
What are they up to these days? I mean, they're just at 860-456-1400. Give Lorraine a call if you know these children are hers.
Yes. Well,
these young little babies.
My son Peter is retired from parole. And he is a very nice young man, gave me a wonderful grandson who I passionately love. My daughter, of course, Melanie, is a teacher at the high school, and I'm passionate about her. She gave me a lovely granddaughter. And my son, Ian, was a paramedic and AP paramedic for Windham Hospital, and then traveled all over the world for the State Department. Teaching in different countries, and he lives nearby, and he has a stepdaughter, and she has 2 children, and so I have all these people around me who I dearly love, and who, whether I'm naughty or nice, still put up with me, and I'm glad that they're all here, I think I would not have been as happy when my husband got ill and passed on if it wasn't for them being in the area and all of the friends that they know, and my opportunity to know all their friends living on the hill and their high school friends. And I still see some of those people today, and it gives me great joy because they'll remember my son or my other son or my daughter, or say, your daughter had my granddaughter in her class and how much she appreciated her. And not that I need the glory or the praise, because my daughter is her own person, but I think that what she's learned and what she knows was because she lived in a diverse community, grew up with all these people that are around her, and she has friends, and those friends appreciate that she stayed here. My goal for them was hopefully that they would work in the area and give back to the community. And God bless, the 3 of them have. And, of course, my daughter that passed on.
Speaking of education, Peter was an educator, as I recall, yes?
Peter was a brilliant educator. He was a swimming coach, professor of physical education at UConn, graduated from UConn first in his class, was an only child, was passionate about our children and our grandchildren and every child in Windham and Willimantic. He was like the Pied Piper. He taught me a lot about the fact that I was extremely outspoken and I had no filter, and he would remind me of that quite often. But those are things that...
he was in politics as well.
Yes, he was. He was on the the Board of Ed with Jerry Lawrence
Yep.
and Mel Sandler, and enjoyed his 4 years. And he contributed, but
He was also on the Board of Finance. as I
yes,
recall.
he was on the Board of
That's what I
Finance.
remember.
Yes.
I remember Peter, period, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I remember him from the Board
Board
of
of
Finance.
Finance, yeah.
Yes, and then he was on the board for the Y, and he mentored and increased the program for swimming for Angus. To do a more progressive program for the children,
Right.
and he was and it had everything to do with running, road races, and everything that went on in the community, and loved it very much. And of course, he didn't know I had already bought the house in Willimantic and had moved before he came home. So when he called from the
Was that overnight?
yeah, it was actually. But as a matter of fact, when he called, when his plane landed in Hartford, and my daughter answered the phone, he said, I'm going to stop at Yukon and then I'll be home. And my daughter said, well, don't go to Mansfield, Dad. We live on Church Street in Willimantic now.
So he was out of town for a while?
He was out for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And so by the time I had
So
moved,
the last time he left the house, I imagine.
right, and it was, it was. But the thing is, and he enjoyed it because he used to run all around Willimantic and ride his bike, and everybody knew him, and he knew all of them.
Yep.
And he started the wrestling program for the state of Connecticut high school wrestling, and several of the adult young men that are involved with the Silverbacks were, he mentored them in wrestling way back when they started. And so he was very involved with the community. And as a matter of fact, Kelly swam on one of the teams, your wife,
Yes.
one summer with her mother screaming on the sidelines, telling Peter how to coach.
That was Kelly Haggerty, right?
Yes.
Haggerty.
She was Kelly Haggerty back in the day, and
Yeah.
Ellen Haggerty's the mother. She was a coach of
Yes,
swimming.
but she
Yeah.
would yell to Peter, no, 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 and I remember the girls would get out of the water and say, Mom, Coach McDevitt is the coach. You have to just cheer, and she would tell him what
She's
to do.
the girls. It's the three daughters who swam on that
Yeah,
team.
they did.
Yeah, Carrie still
and we
held
were
it on the
it was
record at the end.
AAU back then,
AAU.
AAU
Right, AAU was
swimming,
the- yeah.
and all the kids were involved. So we were all involved with the community, and I remember a very nice lady asked me, and I think she was related to Armand Martineau. I can't remember her name. A little French woman that went to St. Mary's Church, and she said to me, "Where were you born in Willimantic?" And I said, "I wasn't born in Willimantic." Well, she said, "You know so," with an accent, of course. She said, "Well, you know so much about it." I said, "I had a wonderful teacher that lived next door," and I remember I said it was Teresa Bartlett, and she said, "Oh, salt of the earth." She said, "Salt of the earth."
She was
and
a
I
peer.
thought she,
Bartlett here.
yep.
Just in case you're not catching
Wow.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no one's
yeah.
catching those kind of. Kind
Yeah, but so again, I
of like the knuckleball of jokes, Kenny boy.
oh God.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
Lorraine,
that.
I've got a question. Now, this is going to take you back, and you're going to say, how do you know? I'm not going to tell you how
Okay.
I know. But there was a story going around about you that goes way back. Way, way, way back. So put on your time machine.
I will.
I heard you were on The Price is Right.
I was.
Oh, we got a celebrity.
I was actually, I had gone to Peter had gotten 5 tickets to go. And so he said one of his students had given him the tickets. Actually, his student's father was Burt Parks. So he had given Peter tickets. And so Peter said, why don't you go to New York for the weekend and, take your mom. So I took my mom, my aunt, my cousin, and myself, and we went to New York. And we were in the audience. I was on the second level balcony, the last seat, and we were cheering and yelling. And then before the show started, the I don't know whether you would call him the commentator, the toastmaster, or whatever he was. He came out with Bill Cullen, who at that time was the person that was the primary on the program, and he said, "Put the lights on. We're going to pick some people for next week's show."
Right.
And so all of a sudden, they were asking. They had gotten 3 people, and Bill Cullen was standing in the side, and so he said, "Wait a minute." So he said, "You in the corner, in the balcony, will you stand up?" So my mother goes, "He's talking to you. He's talking to you." So anyway, so I stood up, and he said, the man came with a microphone, and he asked me who I was and where I was from, and I told him, and he said to the commentator, "This is our 4th person." So the following week, actually, my whole town knew at that point that I was going to be on the evening. These were the evening shows because they were everyday day shows, but they only had 2 evening shows. And so...
so you were on prime time.
Yes, I was. So
Similar
anyway...
to the Voice of
Wow.
So anyway, my whole community shut down, and everyone was watching their TVs. They were like this size because it was that long ago. But it was 1962, as a matter of fact. But anyway, I got there, and they were trying to see where we were going to sit. So I was the shortest and the smallest person, so they said, well, you can sit at the very end. And they were going to question each of us. Bill Cullen did. So long story short, I won.
It's too late, Lynn.
Yeah. you know, this is by the way,
this is why I can't get repeat guests with him.
Well, I'll
He's
tell
so
you right.
rude.
This is his last day on the show, by the way. I'll be taking over next time. It'll be Ken and I. He's going home.
Oh.
But anyway, so I won the first Chevy. Let's see, what was it? It was the first Chevy that they came out with in 1962.
So the Nova?
Nope. It was something else. But anyway, I remember distinctly, it was red and white, and it had white tires. You know that white?
The white wall
around them?
tires, yeah.
White wall tires. And it was a convertible, all red leather upholstery. And my husband and my uncle said, you need to go through town to all these different agencies and see what things cost. So the last place I went to was the Chevy place on the Post Road. And my dad happened to know the gentleman that owned it. So I was getting prices with him. So when I saw the car, I immediately had the amount in my head that I thought it would sell for. And so I did, and I was off by $34.
Wow.
And so I won the car, and my whole community went ballistic, including I thought my mother was going to fall out of the balcony. But anyway, did that. And then the last thing was a cabin cruiser that slept 2 people, and it was Chris Craft, I think.
Chris Craft.
Chris
Nice.
Craft.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was a dealer in my community, and I luckily had stopped there just on a whim, and Mr. Borchetta, who owned the place, he was giving me prices of how, like retail and whatever, wholesale, you know. And so I was thinking, what number am I going to come up with? So, and I was off by $65. So I won that, and I went back the following week as the winner. And at that point, my husband and I were building our first home, and I won an Esther Williams in-ground 32 by 40 swimming pool with 24 pieces of redwood furniture. And it was great. They waited until our house was completed. They came and they built the pool, and they did everything. My uncles and my grandfather and everybody came up and did the landscaping, and that was my stint as a TV star.
That was back when you were living in Mansfield at that time.
I was living in Bethel, Connecticut.
okay.
This
All
is
right.
before we moved up here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we moved up here in '63. But it was an extremely exciting time, but it was also a time that I think people are the same everywhere, but I remember having somebody stop me on the street and saying, since I had won all these things, would I lend them $1,000?
Tell me no, you needed it for the taxes.
And I said to them, you could lend it to me, because by the time I take these things as possession of these things, I'm going to have to owe the government something. But it was a very exciting time, and I got the opportunity at home, at my hometown, to meet Bill Cullen a year before he died, and we talked about the show.
Sure, huh?
And he was so glad that I remembered him favorably, and that, it was he had the opportunity to do that. So that is true, I was.
You've had a lot of honors over the years, Lorraine, meeting celebrities like Bill Cullen but tell me, isn't it the greatest to work with The Voice?
It certainly. I mean, I am beside myself right now. I don't even know whether I'll be able to eat dinner, and I really think I'm going to have to digest.
Yes,
but
it'll take a while.
It's just.
Rain's got to fall in everybody's life sometimes, so you get Ken.
Well, we keep on going here. Lorraine is a wealth of knowledge of actually a lot of political history, but social history, I think, in Windham. And, I think I've been blessed, and I'm sure Mark feels the same way, of having met you so many years ago at this point, in my young age.
Were we all?
Weren't we all?
Right.
Yes.
To get to know you as the person you are, and get to know your I mean, I don't know your sons as well as your daughter.
I hate to say it, Ken, but I was 10 in 63, so
I was born in 62, Mark. Okay, so forget it. Okay, so when she got on some council or whatever. But anyway, the important thing is...
And you still voted. That's what I appreciate,
I'm so glad
Ken.
you came into my life. I'm sure Mark feels the same way.
Thank you so
because
much.
you're something else. You always make me laugh.
We had a long
and these
career
stories
together in
always
the
great.
Republican Town Committee.
Yep, we do. We've had a long... And you know what? I think the best part is here we are, and we survived, and we still have more to give.
Yes.
And let's hope that people ask us.
Well, I know you stayed active all these years on different various committees you volunteered to be on. I mean, it was a quick phone call, and I had no idea she had an issue with her leg at that time. And oh yeah, I'll be there. And I'm like, oh, are you sure? Because she never says no. She's always willing to lend her opinion and speak her mind one way or the other, and she does it respectfully to people. And that's how you've succeeded in life and in our community, I think, because. Right now it's kind of rough and tumble out there. I know Jay, Jay Hanfield, when I meet her, he's made a kind of a comeback going on the Board of Finance. He's expressing his opinions here and there, but taking bangs for it. And all he wants to see is a community that he's third generation in.
Exactly.
Improve. And I think the volunteer spirit is still strong here. I just think there's another group of people that have to come after guys like Mark and Ernie and yourself, and they really need to step up to the plate, because again, running for office is work. It's time away from family, and that's only one way to volunteer. There's other groups like the Third Thursday, and giving your time is important, and you're going to burn these people out who lit the torch,
exactly,
who got it off the ground. That's I keep Roy Dingler, as you know, him and I and Mark and Bill. We did up the light thing. It's been going on our 4th season, and
they're beautiful.
It's been a very positive response from the community.
Oh, they're beautiful.
We keep trying to get some younger people on
Yep.
the group so they can learn. Like Roy's an electrical master without an electrical degree in plugging things and making sure things aren't going to blow up and burn. And no one's going to listen to me because I was the guy who had the idea about the big Santa that kept getting. That was my idea. That kind of an epic fail.
You mean the flotation device?
It was one of the few things I've ever failed at.
He brought back the dirigible.
He did.
But I mean, we need people to pick that up, because you can't let it just dump onto the public works guys. It is a lot of work that they do already for us.
Absolutely.
Because I've got the grandiose idea, if we ever get some money in again, the kitty, I want to buy the kind of lights that go on that bridge they put up only once. So Christmas, you got your Reading Green, right? Then you have almost for the next 6 months, you can, or Valentine's Day, you can go red, and then you can go red, white, and blue. They have them in New Haven. I don't know what they cost, but that's like maybe a gift I'll do to the town one day, because I think this way these guys put up these lights once, they control it by a smartphone probably. Yep. They change the colors for the holiday, because when that bridge is lit up, I think it's the neatest thing.
I've always liked that bridge. I remember the first time I went across with my 2 oldest children with their bikes. My thought was, I hope there isn't a hole as we go across, because it's a long way down. And then it got to the point where my children with their friends would go over to Pleasant Street, and I'd say, how did you get over there? And they'd say, we went over the bridge. And, it was like a really big thing.
That was one of those, from another one of the great names in past, John Vesco brought that bridge to us.
Yes, he did. John was a very nice guy.
Good
he
man.
and I got along great.
Yep.
Mark, it's time for you to two things, right? So I want to thank everyone for listening tonight to Windham Weekly, to our guest, Lorraine McDevitt, my babe. She's back in action, and to her family, keep watching over her. She's a wild one. Yep. So, Mark, why don't you go through the schedule, because it might help me for next Thursday if I got to be here or not.
No, next Thursday we are going to be preempted by a Red Sox game again, and then the following Thursday we're bringing Dara Bowling, who's going to be with us with some of the kids from the lock-in program.
No, we're going to have the cast.
The cast
from
the middle school, from the show. Then after that, it's another Red Sox game, and then the first Thursday in June, we will have the new superintendent of schools. So we'll introduce her to the public, and people can call in and ask questions and meet our new superintendent.
And that's going to be a scoop because no other show has her, but Wyndham Weekly.
We've
because
excited
we
to
are
an
the number
exclusive
one rated
contract.
show. That's what we're
great.
told.
I'll definitely be listening to that,
Yeah.
and I look forward to meeting her.
And when the kids come down from the middle school on the 15th of the month, it's the what's Beauty and the Beast. They don't know it, but they're going to meet a real celebrity here. You know,
The
I've
Beast,
been on
yes, Beast will be
stage
here,
all
yeah.
over the world. I'm going to really
Actually,
impress these kids.
Both of us be the beauty.
See, I couldn't lie too much to Lorraine because she knows my
Right.
background.
I'll be the beauty. You can be the beast. So it'll work out very well.
I'll pretend. I'll pretend that I know.
Were you impressed with being on the Voices show?
I actually, I'm so impressed at this point. As I said, I don't even know whether I'll have my dinner because I'm just so excited.
Too much.
But anyway, it was a pleasure, and I love you guys. I've known you forever, and thank you for loving me back. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for listening tonight. We'll see you in a couple weeks.